Marine biologists captured a mermaid and tried to keep it a secret. Just a week ago, an explorer made a discovery no one will ever forget. His name was Kane Vest. He was a deep-sea explorer from Seattle, Washington. He had spent years studying the ocean, searching for hidden places and lost secrets. One day he heard about an underwater research station. The station had been abandoned in 2003. It was once a place where scientists studied marine life. But something happened, and they left it behind. No one knew exactly why. Some said funding ran out, while others believed the scientists left in a hurry. Kane was curious. He wanted to know what was inside. The station was deep in the Pacific Ocean, far from land. Very few people had ever gone near it. Kane prepared for his dive. He used his small submarine to travel down into the dark waters. The deeper he went, the darker it became. Sunlight could no longer reach this part of the ocean. His submarine's lights shone on strange sea creatures. Some were tiny and moved fast, disappearing as soon as they appeared. Others were large and slow, glowing softly as they floated past. The ocean felt endless. There was nothing but water in every direction, and the silence was unsettling. Kane had explored deep-sea wrecks before, but something about this place felt different. It was as if the water itself was heavier. Finally, after an hour, he reached the research station. It was massive but in ruins. Large metal walls were covered in rust, and thick cables floated loosely in the water. Some sections had collapsed. Kane steered his submarine closer and searched for an entrance. The hatch was open, as if someone had left in a hurry. Kane checked his oxygen tank, put on his diving gear, and carefully swam inside. The station was silent. The only sound was the water moving around him. The hallways were dark, except for the light from his helmet. Old equipment floated near the walls, covered in algae. Some machines were broken, their wires hanging loosely like seaweed. Kane moved carefully, making sure nothing trapped him. He reached the main lab, the heart of the station. The room was large, but most of it was in ruins. Glass tubes, once used for experiments, were shattered. Tables were flipped over, and floating papers filled the room like dead leaves in the wind. Then, something strange happened. A sound drifted through the water. It was soft, almost too quiet to notice. Kane froze and listened. The sound grew clearer. It was a melody. Slow, beautiful, almost like singing. It was unlike anything he had ever heard before. The sound sent a chill down his spine. He turned his head, looking around for the source. But there was nothing. No speakers, no working machines, nothing that could make this sound. He told himself it was just the ocean playing tricks on his ears. He had been deep underwater for a long time. It was probably just his mind reacting to the pressure. Ignoring the sound, he focused on the floating papers. Some were too damaged to read, but others were still clear. He grabbed a few and looked at them closely. His breath caught. The documents were logs written by researchers. The notes spoke about something shocking, a mermaid. At first, Kane thought it was a joke, but as he read more, he realized the scientists had been serious. The logs described a creature unlike anything known to man. It had human-like features, but could survive in the deep ocean. It moved gracefully and had a powerful, hypnotic voice. The researchers had captured it. They studied it, trying to understand how it survived underwater and why it sang. But the logs also mentioned something else: fear. At first, the scientists were excited. They wanted to learn from the mermaid, but over time, they became afraid. The notes hinted at something strange, something the researchers never fully explained. Some believed the mermaid had powers beyond human understanding. They feared it wasn't just a creature, but something more. One scientist even wrote, "We made a mistake." Kane's curiosity grew. If these notes were real, where was the mermaid now? Did it escape? Or was it still inside the station? He had to find out. Looking around the lab one last time, he decided to go deeper. The lower levels of the station were untouched, hidden in darkness. If there were more secrets, they would be down there. He left the lab and swam toward the broken stairwell that led deeper into the station. The water around him felt colder. The dim light from his helmet barely reached the floor below. The deeper he went, the more broken the station looked. Doors were twisted, as if something had forced its way through. The singing had faded, but he could still hear it, just barely. Curious, Kane decided to go deeper. He wanted to see more of the station and find out the truth. Kane continued swimming through the wrecked station. The deeper he went, the darker it became. His helmet light barely reached the walls. The water felt heavier, pressing against him. The station was silent, except for the occasional creak of metal shifting under the deep-sea pressure. Floating debris surrounded him. Pieces of broken equipment, rusted tools, and tattered papers drifted aimlessly. Kane moved carefully, making sure not to disturb anything. He kept his eyes on the path ahead, following the narrow corridor deeper into the station. Then, he saw something unusual. A large metal door stood at the end of the hall. It was thick and covered in rust. The edges were corroded, and small pieces of metal flaked off as the water pushed against it. Unlike the other doors, this one was shut tight. Kane stopped in front of it. That's when he heard the sound again. A soft melody drifted through the water. It was the same song he had noticed earlier, but now it was clearer. The notes were slow and haunting, yet strangely beautiful. The water around him seemed to move in time with the rhythm, as if it was alive. He shivered. Something about the song made him uneasy. It wasn't just sound. It felt like something was reaching out to him. Kane hesitated. Every instinct told him to turn back. But he had come too far to stop now. He needed to see what was behind the door. Taking a deep breath, he placed his hand on the corroded handle. The metal was rough under his fingers. Slowly, he pushed. The door resisted at first, but then with a low groan, it began to move. A cloud of rust particles floated up as it opened. The moment he stepped inside, he froze. In the middle of the room, a figure was floating. A mermaid. She was unlike anything he had ever seen. Her long, flowing hair moved gently with the water. Her eyes were bright, glowing faintly in the dim light. She was not struggling. She was not afraid. She was waiting for him. Thick, glowing chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles, holding her in place. They pulsed with a soft blue light, as if alive. The light flickered, casting strange shadows across the walls. Kane's heart pounded. He had read about this in the research logs. The scientists had captured a mermaid, but seeing her in person was different. She was not just a creature. They had chained something powerful. The mermaid's gaze locked onto him. Kane felt his body go stiff. He could not look away. It was as if an invisible force had wrapped around him, pulling him closer. His breathing slowed. His mind felt light, almost empty. The singing was not just sound, it was inside his head now. The melody wrapped around his thoughts, lulling him into calmness. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew this was dangerous. He needed to move. He needed to turn around and leave, but he couldn't. His body refused to obey. Then the chains began to glow brighter. The pulsing light grew stronger, flashing in slow, steady waves. The mermaid did not struggle. She simply watched him. Kane felt something shift inside his chest. His heartbeat slowed, matching the rhythm of the glowing chains. The water around him swirled gently, moving without any current. For the first time since entering the station, he felt truly afraid. The singing continued. It was soft at first, but it grew stronger. The sound filled the room, wrapping around him like a warm current. He felt strange. His body no longer felt like his own. His arms and legs felt lighter, as if something else was guiding them. He tried to stay still, but his body drifted forward. Step by step, he moved closer to the mermaid. Somewhere in his mind, he remembered the documents he had read earlier. The scientists had written about the mermaid's abilities. They had studied her voice, her movements, and the effect she had on people. They feared her, but they never explained why. Now Kane understood. Her voice was not just a song. It was more than that. It was inside his head. It was controlling him. He grabbed the side of the metal door, trying to stop himself. His fingers gripped the rough edge, but his body kept pulling forward. The force was too strong. He couldn't fight it. The mermaid's glowing eyes locked onto his. His thoughts became slow, slipping away like water through his fingers. He could not think clearly. He could not remember why he had come here. He only felt the need to move closer. Then, something caught his eye. A small flash. His phone floated nearby. The screen was still on. He had started recording before opening the door, but he had forgotten about it. Now the phone drifted in front of him, capturing everything. His own face stared back at him from the screen. His wide, empty eyes, his slow movements. He barely recognized himself. The singing grew even louder. The chains around the mermaid pulsed one last time. Then everything went dark. Kane Vest disappeared after finding the mermaid. His submarine stayed near the station, but he was gone. No one knew what happened until his phone was found. A deep-sea team searching the area discovered it. The phone was floating near the entrance of the station. It was still working, and the last video on it showed everything. The footage began with Kane swimming through the station. He looked at old papers, flipping through the research logs. Then he heard the singing. The camera caught him pausing, turning toward the sound. Slowly, he swam toward the locked door. The next part of the video was disturbing. It showed Kane entering the room. The mermaid was there, floating in glowing chains. His body went still as he stared at her. His eyes were wide, almost empty. The video showed him drifting toward her step by step, as if he had no control. Then, the screen went black. That was the last time anyone saw him. Experts studied the video carefully. They slowed it down, frame by frame. That's when they noticed something chilling. Just before the footage ended, the mermaid smiled. It was brief, but it was clear. After that, no one wanted to go near the station again. People who saw the video believed Kane had been taken by the mermaid. Some thought he was trapped, just like the scientists before him. Others believed something worse, that he had become part of the legend itself. No rescue team was sent. No one dared to explore the station again. The deep sea was already dangerous, but now it held something unknown, something no one wanted to face. Kane Vest was never seen again.